You're a tolerant and thoughtful leader, GT. Thank you. Thank you to the chair. Sorry, lunch awaits you. I'm from California. I'm from a farming district in California. It goes from Modesto down to Fresno. And there's a large, not a large one, but there's a budding movement in California to consolidate water rights down to the Delta. And then there are some who think that securitizing or monetizing and securitizing water rights and putting them on perhaps one of the boards of trade that you govern or participate in would be a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea. I think that commodities are commodities. They move around the globe and they fill voids and shortages through a free market system that you folks would help facilitate. But water is not a commodity. Water is local, water is constrained within its basins, and it does not have global movement, and we cannot always make more of it when the market demands that we might want to. Could you please, any of you, comment on how you see the limitations of water trading or how you see the opportunities of water trading and what we should be concerned about or open to in terms of opportunities when it comes to such?
So I'll comment because we list a contract that's not ours, but we list a contract that is a NASDAQ contract that is a cash-settled water index. I think it's based with the Veles index, as I recall. That listed probably 2+ years ago. It's an index cash-settled for the idea that NASDAQ believed, and we're just a listing agent for them, so it can trade on our exchange. And I believe their thought was that there would be an interest for folks looking to get some sort of economic exposure. You're absolutely right. Water is not a physical product. It's uneconomical to, transport the way you can crude oil or natural gas or corn or gold for that matter. So it has had a high degree of intellectual interest. It's had very little traction economically in terms of very little pickup on that. And I think there is a broadening discussion around how that should be treated. So I would probably point you to reach out to NASDAQ on that contract since we're just the listing agent. But I just want to make sure that the commission knew that there was a product. So I'd point you to NASDAQ to have a further conversation on that product.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please, Mr. Berkowitz.
I would just comment that from the perspective of the CFTC, I'm not speaking for the CFTC in this capacity, but from the derivatives markets, in terms of a derivatives contract, should anybody want to list them, until about the year 2000, the Commodity Futures Modernization Act, the CFTC would look at what's the hedging utility, what's the utility of these contracts. But since 2000, the change in the law, the CFTC just looks at the integrity of the contract and doesn't pass upon the value, so to speak, of the economic use. It's basically up to the market to decide. So the CFTC, were it asked to approve a contract, would pass upon the integrity of the contract. Is it susceptible to manipulation, but would not look at, is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Thank you. That is one of my concerns, is the manipulation. Somebody from far away, outside our basin, outside our community, outside our state, outside our country, could play the water market through political or environmental manipulations, create scarcity, and increase the value of their securitized water interests. And that, I feel, is a huge vulnerability this would bring to my district and to many urban and rural water users.
And if an exchange were to list one of those contracts, by law the contract would be required to be not susceptible to manipulation. The exchange would have to have mechanisms in place, and the CFTC would review those before the contract could be approved.
I'd only point to, just so you know, you may not be aware or may be aware, there is, in Australia, there is a water contract, and I believe it is physical. I think that is probably set up within 5 or 8 years ago, and there have been some challenges with that. So there is a case study as somebody trying to do it as a deliverable contract, and it got into the questions that you'd wonder. Where's their financial interest? Where's an end-user consumer interest, and are those in balance with one another? So not passing judgment, good or bad, but it's a case study, and I think if you wanted to talk to your constituents about that, that's probably a good place to start.
Thank you. I've got 53 seconds left. Any of you wise folks have any more wisdom for me? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll get out of the way of lunch.